Hi Scouts, this is Sean. In this video, I'm going to be covering requirement number 4 of the Personal Management Merit Badge. So please have your workbook out and take some notes while watching this video. So without further ado, let's get started. So requirement number 4, we're going to be delving into saving and investing. And the next requirement number 5, we'll be talking more about investing, like investing in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, that kind of thing. But for right now, we're going to be covering the difference between saving and investing. So the difference between saving and investing is that it's like the length of time, for one example. For example, savings is more of a short-term thing. So like if you're going to buy something soon, like maybe say in the next week or a month or so, then you should probably put your money in a savings account. Another reason to use a savings account is like you can save for like goals, emergencies. So you can have an emergency fund. And for example, emergency fund could be used like, let's say you you lose your job or a sudden expense comes out, like your car breaks down. You can have an emergency fund in place so that you don't have to end up going in debt to like deal with that sudden or unexpected expense. Now, when investing is more of a long-term thing. So you're saving for big goals, so like say maybe saving for like a house or for college or education kind of thing. So basically, when you're investing, you're saying that you don't need the money you don't need the money in the short term. So basically, the next 3 to 5 years. So if you plan on using the money within the next couple of years, you should probably put your money in a savings account instead of investing. But if you're planning on not touching your money for a while, then you should probably invest. Now, another difference between saving and investing is that for savings is more easily accessible, and what that means is that there's a shorter time that's needed to get your money. For example, like if you have your money at a savings account at a bank, then all you have to do really is you have to go to that bank and you go to the teller and you say, hey, I want my money, whatever money you have in your savings account, and that's it. It doesn't take that long, right? All you have to do is just go to the bank and wait in line to get your money. Now, on the other hand, for stocks, the thing is that for stocks, when you want to get like your money, the money you invested back, and you like in cash, for example, first of all, you have to sell that asset. So like you have to sell the stock. Then you have to wait a couple of days for that transaction to process. And once that transaction has finished processing, you'll have to like either wire it or you have to withdraw it from your brokerage account to like a savings account, and that takes another couple of days. So when you're investing, the money takes at least several days to process, and then it takes a while for it to get in your hands. So keep that in mind. Another thing about saving is that there's minimal risk. So it's insured by this government organization called FDIC, and they insure your money for up to $250,000. And what that means is that if your bank, the bank that you have your money at, it goes bankrupt or something happens to it, like the building burns down, for example, your money is still safe because it's insured by the federal government. And whatever money you have, so up to $250,000, the federal government will cover it. So if your bank goes bankrupt, you're fine. Now, if you've taken history, you might have heard about the Great Depression. And one of the things that made the Great Depression worse is that several banks failed because like people, they panicked and they did what's called bank run. So they went to the bank and they tried to get their money out. And back then, they didn't have the FDIC, so their money was insured. So if your bank went bankrupt, your money was gone. All the money you had, it was gone. So basically, now after the Great Depression, the federal government, they created the FDIC, and so that's to insure your money and make sure the banking system is stable. Now, the thing with investing is that it's higher risk, so it's possible to lose some or all of your money, but this also comes with a caveat. You can also make more than you invest, so you can make like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, even 20 times the original amount you put in the investment. So stocks have a great potential to grow, but you can also lose some or all of your money. Now, a great thing about savings is that it earns interest. So basically the money you put in a savings account at your bank, so your bank, they will pay you interest. And interest is basically, they're saying like, hey, thank you for leaving your money with us, leaving it in a savings account at our bank. We'll pay a little bit for keeping, like kind of incentive for you to keep your money at our bank. And basically what banks do with your money in savings accounts is that they loan out the money they have in your account. They loan it out to like businesses or individuals, and then they charge interest on that. So on the people that borrow the money, on that loan, they charge interest. And basically, the bank, they pay you a little bit of the interest on your savings account, and they keep the rest. And that's how banks essentially make money. Now, interest is determined based on how long you deposit the money and how much it is. So if you deposit $1 million, you'll probably be getting more interest than say if you deposit like $100. Now, the thing is that with interest rates these days, they're very low. They're around 0.25%. They might even be lower now that the Federal Reserve, which is the main organization that sets interest rates in the United States, they're cutting interest rates. So what that means is that your savings accounts will pay less interest than before. Now, like I talked about earlier, stocks have a profit potential. So basically, your money can grow without limit through appreciation. So like the stock price, it gradually increases every year or within a year. And there's also types of other income. So like stocks, they'll pay something called a dividend. And a dividend is essentially like it's a portion of the company's profits that a company is paying to their shareholders. Basically, kind of like a incentive reward for these shareholders for owning their stock. So again, for the reasons for using investing, it's like if you want to do a short-term purchase and you want to be able to readily assess your money. While for investing, it's more of a long-term thing, and also you want to grow your money rapidly, exponentially over a long period of time. Now, next is requirement 4B, and we're going to be talking about return on investment and risk. So return on investment is basically used to compare how much the performance of your investments. So the formula for return on investment you can use to calculate like for any asset like stocks or bonds or mutual funds, whatever, is basically you take the gain, so how much you made from investment, and then you subtract the cost of investment, so how much money you originally put into investment divided by the original amount you invested. So for example, a 20% return on investment is that you gain $200. So your $1,000 you put originally is now worth $1,200, and then you subtract the original amount you put in, which is $1,000, and then you divide that by $1,000, and you get 20%. So 20% return on investment, that's actually pretty good, considering that the stock market returns on average or returns average of 10% a year. So you're basically double what the stock market has done. And that's pretty good actually. 20% is pretty good. Now, however, this formula is limited as it doesn't consider time. So if you have a 20% return on interest, you might think, oh, that's return on investment. You think that's pretty good, right? But if that's over 20 years, that's basically 1% return per year. And that's not good compared to the stock market, which has an average of 10% a year. So time does matter. And the downside of this formula is that it doesn't consider time. So kind of be cautious when you hear people say like, oh, I have like maybe a 50% return investment, right? So you might think, oh, that's good, right? But if it's over like 25 years, that's only like 2% a year, and that's not really good. All right, next. So I'm gonna be telling you before I like dive into requirement number 5 about stocks, which is gonna be in the next video. I want to tell you kind of a funny story. So one is when I started investing, one of the first stocks I owned was Nvidia. You might have heard of it. It's like a graphics card company. They make like gaming cards and stuff like that, like components, like graphics cards, GPUs, that kind of thing. So when I first invested in stocks, one of the first stocks I bought was Nvidia, right? And when I bought it, it was around $19 a share. So that was about 5 years ago. So I bought about 10 shares. I just let it sit. I didn't really do anything with it. And about a year later, it went up about 12%. So I made about like 65%. That's pretty good in a year, right? So remember, the average on the stock market is 10% per year. So I thought, it's kind of gone up a lot. 65% is a lot, considering, stock market returns an average of 10% a year. So I sold it. But I made a big mistake. And I'm going to show you next time what happened next. So after I sold my Nvidia stock, the stock price dramatically increased. It went up to like around $200, $300, and then it peaked about a year or two ago. And then after that, it collapsed. But now it's kind of trading around like the $200 range. But look at how much money I missed out. If I had held on to my Nvidia stock for a much longer period of time, I could have made so much more money. But I sold too early. So when we talk about stocks in the next requirement, one of the things a good investor has to be is they have to be patient, right? Because if you're not patient and you sell your stock too early, you miss out on a lot of gains. So while I had a 65% return on my Nvidia stock over 1 year, which is pretty good, if I had waited longer, like a couple years longer, I would have made much, much more money. So patience is key when investing. But we'll talk more about this in the next video, which will be going over requirement number 5. Okay, next up is requirement 4C, and we're going to be talking about the difference between simple interest and compound interest. So if you've taken math in school, you might have already learned about this, but I'm just going to review this again. So simple interest is basically interest is the principal, which is how much you started with, times interest rate, times time. So it's based on the principal amount, which is again is how much you started with. So for example, if you had a principal of $1,000 and you had a 4% interest rate, you did it by five years, then you would have earned $200 in interest. Sounds pretty simple, right? Now, on the other hand, there's compound interest, which takes it to another level. So it's based on the principal amount and the interest that accumulates over the period of time that the interest is. So for example, if you have $1,000 at 4% interest times 5 years, compounded monthly, so every month the interest compounds, it grows, you would have made $221 interest. So that's an additional $21 you have made. So if you can't already tell, you can make much more money with compound interest. And it does because it compounds more than once, while simple interest only compounds once. So here's a graph, and this is based on a principal of $10,000 at 8% interest. So as you can see, compound interest grows much more. It's like if you've seen it like an exponential function, that's what it looks like. It grows rapidly over time. And then simple interest, it grows a little bit, right? But it doesn't grow that much. See, like if you after 50 years, if you did with simple interest, you only ended up with 50,000, while with compound interest, you would have ended up with almost $500,000, which is a lot of money. So when you're dealing with this, so most of the time in real life, you'll see compound interest. You won't really see simple interest. You might see it occasionally, but most of the time, things such as like savings accounts or bonds or that kind of thing, those will be compound interest. Okay, next for requirement 4D, you're going to be talking about diversification. So basically, diversification is the idea that you have a portfolio of different assets like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, that kind of thing, and you try to earn the highest return while having the least risks. So you might have heard the quote, "Don't put all your eggs in one basket," and that's very true, right? Because then, for example, let's say you put all your money into one stock, right? And then the company that you invested in, it goes bankrupt, right? You'd have lost all your money. So that's not great, right? So example of diversification is you own you're owning several different companies, right? So I want you to think about a couple things. So what would happen if one of these companies went bankrupt? Well, I kind of already gave it away, right? If you put all your money in one stock, you would basically lost all your money if a company goes bankrupt. Now, what happens if, let's say, the stock market, it dramatically dropped, right? It went down, all the stocks went down. What would be the result of diversification? If you own one stock, would you be better off if you own one stock or if you own several stocks? I'll give you a moment to think about that. If you own several companies, you would probably be better off than if you only own one company. Because if you own one company, you're basically betting all your money on that one company, and that company could go bankrupt. There's a lot of factors. Companies can go bankrupt all the time, right? Because it's very hard for a business to stay in business. So you should, in practice, people who invest, they should be owning several different companies. Now, diversification, it may not be necessary. For example, that's said by Warren Buffett, who is a famous investor. If you haven't heard of him, he's a very famous investor. He runs a company called Berkshire Hathaway. And what Warren Buffett means by this is that basically, if you know what you're doing, you don't need a diversification. So if you know the companies you invest in, you know how to make money, like you know that industry, then you probably don't need to diversify. Because then if you know what you're doing, then you'll be able to spot like when a company isn't doing well, and then you won't invest in a company, and instead you'll invest in different companies. So that's just something to wonder. That's diversification. That's an intro to diversification for you. If you want to learn more about that, I recommend looking this up on YouTube. But basically, diversification is you're owning different assets. So you're owning like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, that kind of thing, and you're trying to earn the highest return while maintaining your risk. Finally, we'll be talking about requirement 4E and why it's important to save and invest for retirement. So there's 4 main reasons. So the first reason is that you don't want to rely on Social Security. And for those of you who don't know, Social Security is a government program. It was started during the Great Depression by President FDR. And basically what it is like, so when you start working, the government, they will take a small amount out of your paycheck every time you get paid. Basically what this money is doing is it's going to the federal government, and they're paying people who have paid in the system. So basically, when people start working, they pay into the government takes a portion of their money, like a payroll tax, and they put into the Social Security fund. So when people turn 65 or older, they receive Social Security, which is kind of like a government benefit. It's like money from the government, like when you're old. So it's kind of meant to be like a safety net program. So like prevent like seniors from going to poverty. So the problem is with Social Security is that a lot of people are living longer, and as a result, the Social Security fund, which is like manages Social Security and like distributes it to elderly citizens, is kind of running out of money, and I believe it's projected to run out of money within the next decade or so. So it's important to save and invest for retirement because like you can't take government programs for granted because governments can go bankrupt, they can lose money, and these programs are really subject to whether the government is doing well or not economically. Another reason for to save and invest is that you don't want to become a burden on your children. So think about it, if you have kids in the future, right? And then you don't make smart life choices, like smart financial choices, then you might not be able to live as comfortably as you imagine. And then this means you might have to become a burden on your children. So your children might have to care for you, they might have to help provide financial support to you. And you probably don't want that, right? So that's another reason why you should save or invest. Third reason is compound interest. So as you saw earlier, compound interest dramatically increases your money over time. It helps grow your money. And if you leave it for like 30, 40, 50 years, your money can grow a lot. So that's another reason to save and invest. Finally, there's tax savings. So when you get older and you start like working, you'll hear about things like IRA, Roth IRA, 401k, 401k. You might have heard this from your parents. But basically, these are like tax advantage retirement accounts. And these different accounts, they help you save money. So like, for example, for a Roth IRA, you pay taxes when you deposit money into it. And then if you ever want to withdraw your money, you never have to pay taxes again because you already paid taxes. Now, on the other hand, a Roth IRA, you don't pay taxes, but then when you go to withdraw the money, you have to pay taxes. So that's the kind of thing. Let me give you another example. So let's compare you and your friend. So let's say that you start investing in the stock market at $100 a month, and you get about a return about 1% a month or 12% a year. And this is compounded monthly over 40 years. So 12% a year, that's pretty good. That's about the average of the stock market. Now your friend, on the other hand, who's the same age, they don't start investing until 30 years later. And they only invest $1,000 a month for 10 years, while they also get a 12% return per year, compounded monthly. So your friend, they're investing more than you, while you're investing less, but you're investing earlier. So who will have more money saved up in the end? Who do you think? Well, if you haven't already figured it out, your friend will have saved around $230,000. On the other hand, you will have over $1 million. So while your friend, he was investing more than 10 times than you put, the power of a compound interest made your portfolio significantly bigger. So remember, the longer you wait to plan and save for retirement, the more you'll need to like invest each month to catch up. So while it might be easier to enjoy like when you're like in your 20s and you graduate college, like when you're like all the money you're making in the beginning, it's hard to put away money as you get each month as you get older, right? Because then you're gonna have more like kind of things to take care of, like a family, a house, a car, that kind of thing. And if you wait too long, you might not even be able to retire. So you should try to save and invest as early as you can. I really recommend that you guys start right now when you're like around in middle school or high school, because then the earlier you start, the more your money gets to grow. And as you saw in the compound interest chart, your money grows dramatically over time. So that's it for requirement number 4. In the next video, I'll be going over requirement number 5. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.